All right. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining our webinar today. We're going to be talking about EHS analytics, specifically around the Mapestry platform, and give you a little bit of understanding on some of the business cases, business value you can derive from analytics. But before we jump into that, I just want to cover a couple of housekeeping items. One thing is we are going to be sharing slides from today and a recording of this event. We'll send out an email afterwards. We'd also love some feedback. There's a little post-webinar survey for you to fill out, making sure that the topics are useful, what we're presenting on is all valuable for you. The other big thing is we're going to save some time for questions and answers at the end. So feel free to submit them at any point throughout this webinar in the chat function. We'll queue them up and we'll try to get to them during the webinar, during the Q&A part. And if not, we'll follow up via email if we can answer your question too after the webinar. So we always love questions, so feel free to submit them throughout the webinar and we'll queue them up for the end. And then if you have any difficulties, just send me a little chat message through the GoToWebinar panel and we'll try to get it addressed during this webinar. With that, we're going to kick things off. Today I'm joined by Cassie, who's our VP of Product. And then Courtney is our Senior Sales Engineer. And for many of you that already know me, I'm Ryan Janik. I'm one of the co-founders of Mapestry. For those of you that don't know me, my background is in civil environmental engineering and really founded Mapestry to allow companies to make really intelligent environmental safety decisions. And we do that from a software perspective. So before we go into our little talk, I've got a couple of poll questions for the audience here. So I'm going to launch a poll and I'll share the results with everybody here because we get this a lot in terms of like what are the internal stakeholders that really care about compliance metrics? And I'm curious because all of us have different stakeholders that we share performance KPIs with. So I'll let this poll run and then I'll share it with the audience just so people on here really understand if we're talking about analytics, we're talking about metrics, who else is involved in those conversations? And I appreciate everybody submitting their responses and getting you started so early in the morning on responding. So I'm going to share the results now. It's a multi-select, so you can have more than one person you're going to share with, but I think it's interesting, the two big categories, director, regional manager. So, maybe it's your boss, maybe it's peers. If you're a director and you're sharing it to like all your area EHS managers, how are we doing? Are your regions in compliance? And then the flip side is really at a local level. And I think this is the kind of duality of environmental compliance is you've got these site managers, plant managers, batch plant operators, terminal managers doing the compliance activities, and they may not be environmental folks, but it's really important for them to actually see, what's going on, how am I doing for my permit to operate. And then I've got a follow-up question around this is to what extent do they have access today? Because it's really two parts. There's the stakeholder part, and then there's the how quickly can we access and how can we share that information internally to make sure that that director, regional managers, site managers, and everybody else, exec team, board members, are getting the data that we're actually collecting. And the follow-up, and we'll probably do this at some point, is we see more and more pressure from a board exec level on ESG metrics and sustainability metrics. One of the things is maybe the type of data that's being shared may change, kind of permit to operate versus sustainability versus corporate policy metrics. So the extent today, I think big things, Excel's obviously dominant force when we talk metrics. Running the numbers in Excel is always a big part of it. And then the preparing summary slides report, I think is really the other big thing. So this follows what we hear when talking to customers too, of how that data is presented today.
Hey, Ryan, you're breaking up a little bit.
All right. Is this any better?
Still a little choppy.
All right. flip over.
All right, Cassie, let me know if it's still choppy on my end.
That's great, loud and clear.
Cool. So one of the goals today is really this real-time access via dashboards. How do we present metrics, share it in real time? All right, so moving on, one of the big things that I want to talk about today is really two big market trends out there. And before we get into that, one of the things I want to kind of share with you, and if you've heard me talk about it before, like as we, what's changed in the world today, and this is not something that's a recent trend, but over the past 5 years or even more, is we did a lot on paper, and as we saw, Excel, paper, it worked. We could keep things locally in terms of compliance data, compliance metrics, even just the raw inspection forms. And in all honesty, there's a lot simpler rules from an environmental compliance standpoint, and even on the enforcement side, and I'll touch a little bit on some of the market trends as we're seeing with the change in administration and all. But in the past, a lot less oversight. And what we're seeing today out in the wild, on facilities across the board, is really there's a lot of demands on compliance staff, EHS staff, but also operational staff. Is just the speed, the complexity, the consequences are really in some ways outpacing staff. You're being pressured to do a lot more quickly with a lot less like time, money, resources, that type of thing. And one of the big market trends we'll talk about is the impact of COVID and the need from an analytics dashboard, real-time reporting standpoint, but this need to be connected. At the same time, you've got regulations rapidly evolving, the number of new regulations coming out, and the amount of information that has to be reported. And then on the enforcement side, what is like the environmental justice movement really driving? What is citizen lawsuits? What is local, state, federal enforcement? A lot more on the consequences, and one that I think is even harder to quantify, and we're seeing it maybe even in the past 6 to 12 months even more, is like, what is the greater public demands? You see a lot more activist shareholders of publicly traded companies. We're seeing a lot more of the CEO getting involved on the metric side for EHS departments because they're getting asked about, what's our strategy for compliance? What's our strategy from an environmental justice, an ESG, sustainability, all of that. So sharper consequences that may be much harder to quantify in the short term, but we're seeing it from like a shareholder value perspective. So two big things driving the change today. One, resource constraints. We talk about time and money kind of being pressures for EHS and environmental staff. And the COVID impact is an interesting one, and was engaging a little bit on LinkedIn with somebody that had posted, that this is really fueled that in manufacturing, in construction, folks on the ground, the job hasn't changed. You still have a very a building aspect, boots on the ground. But what has changed is all these operations managers, EHS managers are working remotely because of COVID, and that is continued even as stuff opens back up and returns to work. And on the same side, from an agency side, we saw a huge rise in virtual audits, where an agency inspector would email a company, say, send me all your records for the past year. And they would ask for those PDFs. So these virtual audits, and I think state agencies and federal agencies saw this as, wow, this can really be, rather than an inspector driving out to a site, doing this document requests on site and only getting like 1 or 2 site visits in, they can send out all these requests and from their home office do these virtual audits and reviews. So it enabled, even on the enforcement agency side, allowed a lot more to get done. So we're seeing that play out, and I think that'll continue. The other thing is on the data reporting, and we'll dig into it when Courtney and Cassie are talking about it, but like the amount of time for like air permit compliance, how much time it takes to collect all these and aggregate all these different data sources and then report out. And the companies don't have, lots of extra people just hanging around ready to do data entry in Excel. So we're seeing that from a resource constraint perspective. And then in enforcement readiness, some of our team was at the Texas Aggregates and Concrete Association event a couple of weeks ago, and this was a big theme, is the audit ready. And we're seeing it with the Biden administration. April 26th, they put out a memo really pushing next-gen compliance tools. Under the Obama administration, there had been a big push on next-gen compliance tools for enforcement. The Biden administration kind of reactivated that program. And on top of it, way more focus on environmental justice, or EG, and how that overlaps with the manufacturing sector. The next-gen compliance, one of the memos that came out was talking about what can you do to, even as part of enforcement settlements, but I think it's a good playbook for what to do ahead of time if you're being proactive, is electronic tools, being able to report publicly your compliance data. These are two huge themes for us, and one of the things that has driven us at Mapistry. But really, we want to make sure people are audit ready, whether that's internal audits, external audits, and ultimately mitigate any kind of external findings or litigation risk. So these are the two big market trends, and just everyone always wants to know the dollars. So I think this is a good infographic here of what does this cost me, and we've had people use this for internal budget discussions and arguments in terms of why they need to fund software, why they need to invest in environmental compliance. But these add up pretty quick, and there's been some massive enforcement actions, massive lawsuits out there. One of the biggest on the Clean Water Act side, $50 million for MOSA plastics. And thinking about inspection programs and how do you track BMPs, that's an expensive program error. So ultimately, from my perspective as a co-founder of Mapistry, really, we have two goals here. One is we love manufacturing transportation companies, and we really want to fuel that economy. We want to give them the tools to build, make, produce, transport goods. But at the same time, we have a pretty strong environmental and safety ethos, and we really want to allow organizations to make really intelligent environmental and safety decisions. And from a product standpoint, we think software can solve a lot of these and have these kind of the balance between these two sides, where you've got driving economic growth and sustainable economy at the same time protecting on the environmental and safety side. So a couple things is we've made huge investments over the past 6 to 12 months. Some of our customers are here, but we really want to invest in analytics for this group of customers. Our customers were constantly evolving, iterating, learning, taking feedback, and then building even better tools. And we really want to give even more proactive tools. And I think for me, analytics is the #1 thing for this. Is we can collect all the data we want, but if we can't, pull insights, make intelligent decisions around it, why are we collecting it? That's the risk with a binder or an Excel sheet on somebody's desktop. So it's why it drove a huge investment in analytics, and super excited for Courtney and Cassie to talk about, what does that look like and what can you do with it in terms of, garnering insights. Hey, Courtney, if you can advance the slide, my mouse is frozen.
Okay, Cassie, I think we're on to you.
Yeah, the screen is actually frozen for me. Still on customer needs.
Let me see. Stop showing. Cute. Are we on to software strategy?
Okay. There we go. Yeah, so before we get into Courtney's demo, I wanted to expand a bit more on the principles that we brought to the product as we thought about how we wanted to do EHS analytics at Mapistry. And it really comes back to what Ryan was saying about making it super easy to access and share the EHS data that you're collecting. Because if you have all that data and you can't actually identify trends and do anything with it, the value is not there as much as if you can really bring that to life with these intelligent dashboards. So first off, we really focused on these ready-made, out-of-the-box EHS focused dashboards that were purpose-built for the needs in the EHS space. And a lot of this comes back to trying to help you reduce spending valuable money, time, energy on consultants and especially costly configurations. So having the industry experts that we have in-house at Mapestry helps us to be able to create purpose-built dashboards and then specifically highlight problem areas such as sites with the most incomplete inspections or past due tasks. So once again, you're not just looking at the data, but it's actionable. And actionable in real time, so being able to see the daily activity and progress across your different sites, track KPIs that are specific to your business, and proactively detect issues before they become problems, fines, like we saw on the last slide, or even lawsuits. And then finally, flexibility. So we do have a lot of ready-made, out-of-the-box, click and go type dashboards, but we also wanted to give the flexibility that we know that you need around the different aspects of the business that you might be looking at on a day-to-day basis with a variety of filters. So being able to filter into different compliance areas, different site tags, and then if you spot an issue, being able to actually drill down into specific inspections, tasks, logs, and see the details and specifics about what's going on there. And for what's actually new, and Courtney's going to get into this in depth and go through some specific use cases in her demo, but at a high level, turning EHS data into actionable insights. In our new analytics product, you're able to see the status of your tasks, inspections, and logs, filter those down by different organizations and sites, tags and categories, assignee and due date. And like I was saying, really highlight those areas that are falling short and identify potential problem areas. And then getting back to that shareability and being able to share with it within the org with the different stakeholders with that data, any of the visualizations or dashboards are able to be exported. They're really polished, they look good. You can use them in reports, emails, any kind of internal comms to bring to life what's going on at the org or site level. And then finally, on any of the different data sets, you're able to configure alerts for different conditions. For example, if you've exceeded permit limits or there are missed mandatory inspections, and get alerts and emails for that so that you're notified as soon as something's happening and you can be more proactive in the moment and real time. And with that, I'll hand it back to Courtney, who's going to dive deeper into each of these points with her demo.
Thank you, Cassie. So yeah, in just a moment, I'm going to share the new dashboard with you guys. What we're going to walk through is some of the new functionality that we have related to like scheduled deliveries, custom notifications, how to drill into this information, and how to use the exports. And then we're going to show you how to answer some common questions using the filters and the drill downs available. So questions, we hear come up are like, are my daily safety inspections being completed? Or what types of BMP corrective actions are being identified? And did we have any deviations with our visual emissions observations? So with that, I'm going to jump over to the dashboard here. Okay. Let's see. Okay, so this is the new analytics dashboard. As Casey mentioned, we've got a bunch of ready-made layouts ready for you. The information is going to be grouped into 3 categories: inspections, tasks, and logged items. So up top here is inspections. We see our inspections by status, whether things are complete or incomplete. Inspections by category. So it kind of shows you where you're spending your time. If we have a lot of air inspections or a lot of safety inspections. So this gives you information, about where your staff are spending their time. And then we have the map view. So you can see graphically, which sites are performing well, which sites maybe need a little more support in getting up to speed. So then with tasks, these are things that are going to be identified during your inspections. These are corrective actions or reoccurring tasks. They're going to be summarized here in a similar manner. And then finally, the logged items. So these could be things that you're logging in Mapestry, like production volumes, equipment hours. And again, we see if things are being logged on time, and then what categories of information we're logging. So up top here, we have some of your filters. We've retained the site tag filters. So if you guys are using site tags, you can come in and be able to drill into specific, based around specific tags. You can similarly drill into your, filter this by site, and we'll play with the filters more later when we're answering those questions I brought up. You can filter by category. So if you're want to just see maybe stormwater and wastewater together. If you want to see safety and security together, you can filter that way. And then you can also customize the date range. So what we're looking at right now is the last 30 days of data. There's some available preset filters, or you can come in and set a date range. Anytime you change a filter, you'll hit refresh and your data will update. The next thing I want to talk about is the new export functionality. So I saw a lot of you said, you spend your time making these slides for reports. So one of the cool features that's now available is this one, you can download the entire dashboard to a PDF, but you can also schedule that. So you can come in here and schedule a delivery. And this doesn't have to be a Mapestry user. This can be that exact team that maybe you need to report out to on a monthly basis or on specific days. You need to send them your performance metrics. You can send it to them as a PDF, and you can filter it down. So if you want to send people, if some people need to see the safety and security information, you can send a dashboard, schedule a dashboard for them. If somebody needs to just see the air information, you can schedule a dashboard for them. So the goal is to really save you guys time on preparing those slides and pulling the information back out of Excel. So I'm really excited for this option to be able to schedule deliveries. Cancel. And then similarly, any one of these dashboards, the view is downloadable. So every tile we see here, we can download the data from that tile, and it's going to ask you again what format you want it in. So if we download, we can download a spreadsheet, and it's going to show us basically this view as a spreadsheet. And like the downloads, each box is also going to have a notifications or alerts option. So with that, you can come in and customize your own alerts. So if we want to know anytime our inspections, maybe we want anytime our past due inspections is greater than 30%, we can send that to ourselves or our supervisor and save it, and it's going to send out daily. Again, we can change the frequency, weekly, monthly. We can save those. So you can use the notifications. You could also set one if maybe we want our managers to know anytime the past due, completed on time reaches 100%. Maybe we want to see the good news too and be able to celebrate perfect completion rates. Okay. So some of the questions we hear about are if there are any, how are our facilities doing on our daily workplace exam forms? So we can come up here and we can filter down. Maybe I want to just look at, my queries, and I want to look at the safety inspection around those. So I'm going to hit refresh, and it's going to pull the data for me. And, and this is important because we're looking at daily inspections, and we want to make sure that they are getting done on time.
And part of the nice thing with this is you can really drill into like a specific site that, this quarry operation, you can really drill down and ask the question, are they doing everything they need to? And, one of the poll responses was around giving metrics to site managers. And this is where you can do that. You can actually create a dashboard and say, this is how you're doing week over week under safety for this specific operation.
Yeah. So we've got our data pulled up. We see, we've got some past due inspections, and like Ryan was saying, creating these, like accountability around the site manager. So I can come down here and see at a site level, well, my Houston site looks like they're doing good. Dallas is okay. And then up here in Seattle, they're my lowest performer. And I can click here and it's going to give me a couple options. And one of the things, that I think is really cool is you can click right here and send an email to the person designated as the site admin. So if you're not needing to go look up, well, who's in charge of Seattle? You can send them an email directly from the Mapestry dashboard. You've got their phone number. You can go in and see exactly which ones are missing. So this is one of the cool drill down features we have. It's going to pull up for me. Okay, I can see, well, some of these they're just doing late. So some of the past due is because they're doing them late. And then I can also see they have a handful of missing inspections too. So it's telling me, which ones are incomplete is what's due today, like past due are things they've missed. They've done them late. So I've got this information here. And like our widget, like the little visualizations, I can also download this data. So if I want to export this to Excel, I can. And I can also go from here just to their site dashboard. So I was interested, in safety, and I see that they're not performing well in safety. Well, maybe I want to see how they're doing overall. So I can jump over to their site dashboard real quickly and see, overall, how are they doing? Who are the other people at this site that are involved in this program? I can also, so I can see how many overdue tasks this site has and just get kind of a general idea of the compliance health of this site. So I can do that all, very quickly from the dashboard and just asking that question, like, are my safety inspections being done? So the other question that we hear a lot, people want to know, well, can I tell what kind of BMPs I'm having problems with? So with our stormwater, we can do the stormwater BMP, the stormwater category, and then we'll hit refresh here. And so with Mapestry, you're doing your stormwater inspections in Mapestry. And then when you're finding those corrective actions, you're creating tasks around them. Tasks are our polite word for corrective actions. And before, you could only really see if the inspections were being done. But now we can come down and see what our stormwater tasks have been for the past 30 days, or we could even, go into a longer history of record if your sites have been on Mapestry for a longer time. We can come in and we can open up these tasks. And so here, what it's going to pull up for me is the notes around what tasks were being identified. So I'm seeing, issues related to missing BMPs, trash, filter socks. So if I had, maybe a year's worth of data or 6 months worth of data, I could be able to export those and maybe manipulate them in Excel and see, are we having trends? So from these views, some of the other things you can do is we can, again, get right back to our site dashboard, or we can get to that specific task that was created. So I can open up here and ask it to take me directly to the task that was created. And I can come in here and see, it's going to pull up the task for me. So I see, your creation date, there's trash in the inlet. And I can also see any photos that were attached to the task. If this was a task that's assigned to me, I could also, if I know it was closed out, I can just mark it as complete from here. So I can close that one out while I'm here. And then again, like I said, you can download this data, manipulate it outside of Mapestry. We want to make it easy, really easy for you to get the information you need quickly out of Mapestry, and also make it easy for you to have access, to your own data and be able to use it in ways that benefit you. And the final question we hear come up is related, one of the questions we wanted to highlight is related to just like the air permits and doing that semi-annual reporting around your air permits. So similarly, we can filter down to air. Go ahead and refresh this. So, we hear from like cement plants, we know this can be a very time-consuming activity to go in and track down every 6 months any deviations you had from your air permit. So again, if you're using Mapestry to do your method 22 observations, and, anytime you have a deviation in there, you're creating a task around that. And then similar to the stormwater BMPs, you can come in, again, I'm just looking at the last 30 days of data, but you can set this to 6 months and get that whole 6-month period. And I can come in here and look at the tasks that were created here. And then I've got the list of, again, those tasks that were identified during my method 22s, or, if I was doing my bag house inspections, I could go back up and then filter down to, just the Fontana site if I wanted to, and then have that report ready for the Fontana site. Again, with all of these, like before, you can get back to the task, you can get back to the site from this view. And so, we've gone through kind of how the dashboard feels, what we're doing with it, as well as how to get some of those questions answers out of Mapestry to save you guys time with your environmental compliance program. This is, having seen the backside, this is really just the tip of the iceberg here. And, we're really excited about what we're going to be able to do with your data going forward. And I'm going to kick it back over to Cassie to talk about what's next.
Yeah, so like Courtney mentioned, we have a lot in the works. Seeing the data that we have available, this is just the tip of the iceberg and what's going to be possible with the new analytics platform. So I'm super excited. And some of the things that we're going to be focusing on next are, first and foremost, expanding those out-of-the-box dashboards to focus on more category-specific data. So air emissions, storm and wastewater sampling, and being able to drill down into that in separate and expanded dashboards. Continuing to build out the visualizations and filters. So for example, being able to directly see days to completion, which is something that you can see in the drill down today, but being able to see that in its own visualization tile. And then finally, tell us what you need. I'm always looking for feedback for future product releases. We also offer custom solutions where we can really have someone on our solutions engineering team dive in and figure out what you need for your use case. So if you have any ideas, anything that you are looking at this demo like, gosh, that's great, if it just did this one thing, drop me a line. I'm just Cassie@mapestry.com and be happy to hear it, even jump on a quick 15-minute call. Always excited to talk about product. And with that, Ryan, did we have any questions come in?
Yeah, a couple questions. I answered one in chat, but one of the things is looking at a top level view maybe Courtney, if you can answer, how do you drill down into like a site-specific data? Is it just the data table, or can you get over to a site dashboard and see the actual inspection forms? And then as part of that too, can you talk a little bit about how inspections might get into the system in the first place from like the mobile app?
Sure. So yeah, from any one of the views on the dashboard, there's always a link back to the site's overall dashboard, or if you're looking in the inspections visualization, there's going to be a link. So it's anytime you see the 3 dots next to an item, there's going to be a link back to, from the inspections view, a link back to the specific inspection, and a link back to the site dashboard. So it makes it really easy to go from the dashboard back to that specific site of interest. And then, yeah, people are using the mobile app to get the information in. So like that example I showed with the photo, you know, you're out doing your inspection with your mobile app, you can take pictures directly from your phone's camera. So, you know, our goal is we've made it really easy to get information into the system. And then with the analytics dashboard, we're making it really easy to get information back out of the system.
Yeah, and having that like audit loop, you know, one of the polls was talking about who do you report out to. So at a high level, analytics might be shared with a director, exec board, regional managers, and then also at a local level, you know, can you drill down and talk about to a site manager, like why of the last 6, you know, are we getting them in late? You know, are there commonalities from those task creation that Courtney showed that we can then click through and drill down into and pull that up? So it works at both levels, high level analytics, and then drill all the way down to a really local level to dig into the details. Got a bunch of questions coming in, so we'll try to queue them up and get through them. Is there an ability to capture or track trends, like 30% of tasks are flagged as like safety or hazmat, or, you know, tied to those specific inspection forms?
Yeah, do you want me to jump back over to the dashboard, Ryan?
Yeah, if you want to. I think we've got enough time if you want to show people it. I think it's always nice to see it.
Yeah, let me jump back over to the dashboard. So let me see. Yeah, so we've got the inspections by category. We also have tasks by category. So, you know, we can see here we're only seeing, you know, air and stormwater tasks for this site. And I know from my inspections that they're also doing safety inspections. So, you know, it raises the question, why aren't they creating safety tasks? Do they need additional training around what to look for during their safety inspection? So you can see the tasks by category, you know, kind of gives you 2 pieces of information, like where are people spending their time? You know, where are we having challenges at our site, as well as maybe where are things being overlooked? If we see a bunch of zeros, you know, if we see categories just completely missing, you know, maybe things are being overlooked or not documented well.
Yeah, and Courtney, you bring up a good point on like the training, or like at a minimum, analytics gives you the ability to ask further questions. When you pull this up and say, why we're doing, you know, 2/3 of our tasks are stormwater. We have a lot more compliance areas. Why is only stormwater getting stuff flagged for it? We all know industrial sites are not perfectly clean in all these areas. So it at least allows you to ask a bunch of questions. And then from there, you can dig in. Is it a training issue? You know, are there different people doing stormwater inspections versus safety? And the safety person doesn't realize that they can create tasks, and that's part of a robust program to create these follow-up and action items. But the first thing is, if you don't have any data and insights, you know, there's no way you can even ask those follow-up questions. One of the things is, you know, is there a typical, like, what inspection items do people pay attention to the most? Is there any one that you've seen, Courtney, that people are paying more attention to versus others in the dashboard?
Like as far as like categories or specific?
Yeah, in terms of category, do you see customers using it in a certain category area more than others? You know, are they looking for inspection completion more than others?
Yeah, I know safety's become, we've just started including safety inspections, so we do talk about that one a lot, especially because they're daily, so there's going to be a higher volume of them. So we see, I feel like we're feeling a new focus around safety as we start to incorporate that into more and more programs.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you bring up a good point around the frequency. That's been my experience too, is if you've got a high frequency inspection, in certain localities, you might be inspecting once a day, twice a day for multiple items, safety. If you're in a mining operation, under MSHA for the building materials space, you're doing daily workplace exam forms, but it's not just daily, it's the crusher plant, it's the conveyors, it could be multiple inspections daily. And in those cases, that high rate of frequency really drives a lot more eyeballs on it. One of the other questions, is what kind of alerts do you recommend setting up to improve reporting to like the exec team and to others? Is there any kind of best practices around alerts that you can provide?
I think the alerts are useful. I think it's also better to just be in the dashboard. So, creating a habit of checking the dashboard, on a daily or weekly basis to just kind of see how things are going. I mean, maybe a weekly notification would be useful. You can also set up notifications, around, if something's entered. So if you have specific, if there's a specific inspection that, happens only monthly and maybe you want to see it as soon as it comes in, you could look at notifications around that. But I think one of the best ways is to just be in the dashboard and see it. So the notifications are great for the non-Mapestry users that need to keep tabs on things. But to me, the best way is to just be in here on a regular frequency and just see overall how things are going.
Yeah. And how can you set up an alert to send out that dashboard to those non-Mapestry users? Can you set up some way to share that dashboard on a routine basis?
Yeah, that was, so that's with the scheduled deliveries. So you can schedule a delivery, and this email address, again, doesn't have to be a Mapestry user. So you can enter any email address, you can send them monthly, if they just want it on the 15th. Oh, if they want it on, every Monday, they want to know how things are going. You can set it that, and again, you can filter down. So you could send somebody information about safety, and you could send somebody else information about stormwater, or you could send them based on the site tags you have. So if you've got them grouped regionally or by focus area, you can filter down and create those automatic scheduled dashboards, and they get just a PDF of everything you see here. So with the map views, the types of inspections, the completion rates, and then you can also customize that date range. So if you want to see, if you're sending it weekly and you want to see the last 7 days, or if you want to see how things are going over 30 days. So there's a lot of flexibility in what you can schedule out ahead of time. And then, that's just one less thing you have to remember to do on a regular basis to get those metrics out to people.
Yeah, I think that scheduling is like, if somebody wants to know the first of the month or the last 30 days, every 30 days is like, how are we doing? And even splitting it up. If you've got somebody that's really from a risk or even insurance claims, they want to see the safety metrics month over month, scheduling that and setting that up to share that, or an area operations manager, or even like a VPGM of a whole region. With those site tags, you can get that, like their sites. How is everybody doing once a month, even once a week? How are we doing overall? And schedule that and have those analytics. The same thing as if you ever have to do like quarterly business reviews internally, a lot of our team does that with our customers, but if you have to do it also internally, is you can email it to yourself so that you don't have to, figure it out or put it in slides. You can just get the download from Mapestry of answering the question of how are we doing? How are we doing weekly on these inspections? One of the questions, and this is kind of related, is who sets this up? Does it come kind of off the shelf? And how, and then at a site level, how are like the state or local regulations, the frequency for inspections, the questions that are answered, how is that all set up? Courtney, if you want to answer kind of the two parts. One, this dashboard analytics view, who sets this up, what's out of the box, and then also at a site level, maybe share a little bit about what solutions engineering does when somebody's coming on board as a Mapistry customer.
Sure. So what's really exciting is everything that I showed you today is part of our base platform. So you will get all of these views, the filters, all of this functionality is core to Mapistry. And then for the setup, if somebody's coming on board, we have our team of solutions engineers. They have backgrounds in civil engineering, environmental engineering, and are familiar with the state and regulatory requirements. So each site is going to get their dashboard. Let me click over here. So each site would get a dashboard that's configured to their specific permit requirements. So, with that, it's the stormwater, what are the stormwater frequencies? What is the method 22 frequencies? We've got sites that are running, 3 of these method 22s because they've got daily, weekly, and monthly frequencies. So we're going to set up specific to the permits for that site. And we're going to work with the site to make sure it's configured in the way that's going to be useful to them so that they know that they're doing it on the right frequencies. And we can set up, if there's custom forms or facility specific forms, our solutions team can help set those up as well. So there's a lot available in Mapistry. Our goal is to really make it your one stop for your environmental compliance, environmental and safety compliance programs.
Yeah, and I guess a related question is, what happens if it's not a regular inspection? So the question is there a way to analyze a non-routine inspection or sampling event? If you do an exceedance investigation, say for stormwater or wastewater, that's not part of that routine regular inspection, can you have that in the dashboard too? So maybe, Courtney, if you want to talk a little bit about how like ad hoc inspections work and what we can build from even a custom standpoint for those extra investigatory practices that a company might employ.
Sure. So you'll see, some of these are going to be set as needed. So when anything's set as needed, it's not going to show up as past due, but it will show up with your total inspection. So if you've got, if there's something, we would probably assign something specific, like a facility, we might group it under the facility or somewhere so we can filter and then set notifications around if that inspection came in. So the as needed things, they are going to total up over here. You are going to see them in that running total of inspections, but they're not going to show up, they're not going to count against your metrics related to past due. So they would show up over here with the rest of the inspections that are coming in. So there's a lot of flexibility in how you can use this product for your sites.
The other thing is we can create like custom forms outside of like a state, local, federal regulations, or even under your program, specifically around those like investigatory practices. So if you want to get really deep and do some sort of like internal audit on every time that you've got an exceedance of a sampling result, we could set that up. We've got a whole a way to create custom forms and develop those. So even the questions you can ask can be customized. And that's where we see a lot of people using it for those like extra investigations outside the like normal permit to operate or regulatory environment. On the custom side, Courtney, one of the questions is, can you create your own custom charts and dashboards? Maybe if you can go into like what you're doing for like customizations with filters versus like truly customizing the look of these dashboards?
Sure. So yeah, what a Mapestry user can do right now is, create those views that I showed with the filters. So you can come in and, configure what views you want to see, if there's specific categories or types you want to see. And then our solutions engineering team can work with you, again, to get more detailed, or to get, if there's something you don't see here, like Cassie mentioned, if there's things you don't see here right now that you want, like, let us know, because one, there's a good chance other people may want it, and it may just appear in our dashboard someday. But if there's, again, specific things, I know some of the things they're going to be working on next is pulling in the stormwater, all of our stormwater, wastewater sampling data into the dashboards. We can do things like, if you've got a form with a bunch of yes, no questions, we can get metrics around how many of those questions were answered yes. So there are, there's a lot of really kind of exciting, geeky, exciting things that our solutions team can do for you with your data. And, we're excited to talk to you guys about what types of information is going to be most valuable to you.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, Courtney's underselling it as like how much we geek out on like figuring out the best way to present this data, show this data, collect it, make it really easy, both from like a form development, site level data collection, and then getting it in here that like yes, no, is we can start looking at percentages and showing, and even set limits and trigger off of those of how people are answering at a site level. So yeah, the solutions engineering team is a great resource for Mapestry customers, and it's something that we're always like iterating on, building new functionality into it. Before we wrap up, a couple questions on like, what's included, cost. One question is for just one site, what is, is this part of it? Is it useful for just if I only have one location, or is the analytics really for multi-location? Courtney, if you want to answer that, and then maybe show some of the, like, if I'm just one site where I might not need this large scale analytics, I might just want to look at the site level dashboard, and some of the analytics I can look at just at an individual level.
Sure. So, this is going to be very useful to, dealing with lots of sites. At the site level, we can see, what we're doing. The site levels where you can come download the individual inspection forms. So, from the site level, you can download all of your PDFs. So like we said, to be audit ready, you can come download all of the PDFs of the inspection forms and send those out to, the regulator. From the site level, you can see which, the site level, you can see your upcoming and overdue tasks. You can add tasks, you can filter tasks. Even at a site level, though, where you can come in here and then be able to see exactly like what was the information, in those tasks. So if I was at a site level, if I only had one site in Mapestry, I would only have one site name over here, but I could then still see, get that nice exportable list of like what were all the details of the sites, that year. So I could take that maybe to my manager and say, like, these are the issues we're having at the site. Here's a year's worth of tasks that were created. So I think there is still a lot of cool functionality at a site level to be able to get that information around the details of the tasks back out of Mapestry.
Cool. And one of the questions around that was just, is it available at a reasonable cost? And I think it just depends what you're kind of, like, we go back to the numbers from a potential risk, and how valuable is having data collected electronically from like facility turnover, audit ready, but also how valuable is data from being able to analyze it and be proactive versus potentially incurring brand risk, litigation risk, enforcement action risk. So the reasonable question on price can be answered a bunch of different ways. But I guess with that, we've got a couple minutes left. I want to ask one final poll question for everybody here is how valuable, a lot of people on here have very specific questions and everyone's situation is different. But I'm curious for folks on here, are you interested in seeing a more custom demo tailored to maybe your site specific or your organization or even your role specific? Is that valuable for you? Because the goal for today was really just introduce Mapstry Analytics and what you can do and all the new functionality and give you some of like our viewpoint from my perspective, from Cassie's and Courtney's. We've kind of got 3 different viewpoints here. So this is just the, the initial introduction to Mapstry Analytics. Now, thanks all for answering, and we can follow up with folks that want a more custom demo and really work to set up something that really resonates for your situation, for your sites, for how you want to display data and report it out. With that, Courtney, maybe if you can flip over the contact info, let us know if you have follow-up questions. As Cassie said, product feedback's always great. Thank you very much, Cassie and Courtney, for jumping on here today and giving your 2 perspectives from the environmental technical side, Courtney, and Cassie from the product strategy side. Thank you all, and thanks all for joining us today.